Now this might seem like a funny topic coming from me because I always talk about the strategy of shooting bucks. You'll notice I don't talk about inches very much. I talk about age. That's what's really important. And boy, people lose a lot of perspective nowadays with talking inches and how big a buck is. I talk about, I've had an Ohio client that has seen in his area a 200-inch buck for 15 years in a row. He was mad when he shot a 196. And so we lose perspective because we have areas like that, areas where not only do bucks have the genetics, because I'm not going to say 50%, but there's a huge percentage of areas in the country that can produce 200-inch animals regularly. They're not a 1 in 100,000 animal. The problem is they don't get the age. Someone mentioned Kevin Smith on Instagram. I'm on Instagram. I put a lot of stuff out on Instagram, a lot of shorter things, try to get tips and strategies out there, so make sure you guys are following me, Whitetail Habitat Solutions. But I put something out with Kevin Smith, and Kevin Smith and I were together. So we were on this client property, and Kevin Smith found a deadhead. I saw some hair. I'm like, man, there's got to be a dead deer around here. And Kevin went over in some brush, picked up this beautiful buck. And someone made a comment. Well, the good thing is, we were talking about deadheads. The good thing is that buck, I'm sure, has spread his genetics around. A lot of people don't realize in this area where that giant buck was, is the genetics are not a problem. There's probably better genetics of that buck. Most deer in that area have a potential of 170, 180 at 5, 6 years old. The problem is the age. Too many hunters, not too many, but there's a lot of hunters. I mean, when you talk 20s, 40s, and 60, 80 acre pieces, farmland, a lot of area of almost suburb mixed with rural, there's a lot of hunters. It's hard for that buck to get 5, 6 years old to express that 200 inches. So that's a problem. Southern Michigan, great example. Jackson, Calhoun, Hillsdale. There's some incredible counties in southern Michigan that produce well over 200-inch animals. I've seen them 230, 240 some inches. The problem is they never get that age, or they rarely get that age. So that's a limiting factor. So when I say that, even looking at genetics, one person's 140 might be another person's 200-inch. And so there you have that problem. But more often you have problems where you just have too many hunters. And that kind of brings up number of hunters. How many hunters do you have hunting your land? There's talk online sometimes. Someone will say, you'll never get that 200-incher if you don't let that 160 walk. Let me repeat that. You never get that 200-incher if you let that 160 walk. Well, that 160 might be a 5-year-old. He might go down to 155 the next year. You might go up to 170. Maybe he does blow up. Maybe you have 5 hunters hunting your land, even if you have 500 acres. Maybe you have neighbors with 40s with 3 hunters on, or 80 acre. You don't know that complexity. There's very few people out there that own a parcel surrounded by ag, or surrounded by almost fencing, or surrounded by no hunting, where you can look at this parcel, whether it's 40 acres, 160, 200, and say, you know what, these deer don't, even if they leave the border, it's open land, they're open hardwoods, they're almost fenced in. I can let this buck grow older because of the number of hunters. I'm hunting by myself. I only have 1 hunter on the property. Most people don't have that. Here we have 245 acres, but we'll have on opening day of gun season, it could be 5 people this year, including my daughter Autumn, if she comes out, my buddy Mike, Jen, Dante, myself. It'd be 5 hunters. So we'll see how many hunters we have, but it gets to a point where you just got to really set realistic expectations and enjoy the hunt. And that's part of the problems. You get into these genes right here, yeah, you got to have good genes, but there are so many areas out there that can produce 200-inch deer. Many, many areas. Dylan and I see it all the time. Joe, Kevin, between all of us, I'm sure we go to 30 states a year, 35 states a year. And there's so many areas that have that potential to limit it. The limiting factor is the number of hunters on their land, the number of hunters next door, always a huge limiting factor. Not to mention, when we go to someone's property, they hire us to design their habitat. We're really designing their hunt. That's always the lowest hole in the bucket. So there's areas capable of producing 200-inch deer regularly. They're not 1 in 100,000. In some of those ages, a 5 or 6 year old deer, 7-year-old deer, if you add that in there, like a 6-year-old average, I believe there's areas that would be 1 in 10. Yes, literally 1 in 10, 1 in 12, 1 in 8. Once they get to that age, they're close to around or above 200 inches. Other areas, it could be 1 in a million. But bottom line is, when you're talking genetics, there's a huge number of areas that could express that. How the land is hunting is a limited factor too. You might kick off those deer, they get shot by another neighbor. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, your own habitat, how you hunt it, genetics are part of it, but age I see as a limiting factor more often. What does that mean to you? You know, I get sick of it. I get sick of that 200 inch. I mean, I could literally, this is what I do for a living. I could say, okay, just Jen and I are going to hunt. We're going to shoot. We're going to limit ourselves to 2 deer a year here. And we're going to try to see if we can produce. And we're only going to, and if we shoot some of the other ones, we're going to shoot some that we don't think have 200 inch potential. We can manage that way. To me, it wouldn't be very fun. I want to bring Dante into the hunt. I want to bring Mike. If my daughter wants to come out and hunt, that's fun. That's a lot of fun. So it really important. So strategy, what does this mean for you? What kind of strategy should you develop? And I think it was a QDMA a long time ago, but you talk about if you really want to focus on improving the herd at the same time enjoying the herd, focus on that upper 10%. So around here, let's say there's 35, 40 bucks we get pictures of throughout an entire season. Don't think that those are all living on this property. What that means is we'll see some of those bucks 3 or 4 times. We'll see some of those bucks once, some of them 20 times, 50 times on camera. Some we'll see for a day or 2 period. Some we won't see for weeks at a time. They were there in the early season, then they come back later. So this is really overlapping, probably more reflective of 1,000 acres or more. If you look at where those bucks are traveling regular, whether we get their pictures at night or during the day. But out of that 45 bucks, there might be 4. That's at 10%. 5 bucks that you're really focusing on. That's a realistic expectation. And in your area, that might mean there's 15 bucks and you're focusing on that top 1 or 2. Who cares what size they are? Who cares what age they are? Go hunt and have some fun. You know how you become a better hunter? One way is you kill deer. If you're not killing deer, you're just watching them every year. What happens when that moment of truth comes in 6 years and you have this opportunity to pull back? You're going to be so nerved up. You haven't shot a deer in 6 years. Your fail rate's going to be very high. And we all have a fail rate. You know, if you're very experienced, you focus on that 10% rule. If you haven't shot a lot of deer, focus on more of that 20, 30%. If you're out on public land, maybe you focus on more of the, I want one of those bucks that I shoot to be in that upper half of the herd, you know, from what I'm seeing. Set realistic expectations so you can actually, you know, really, truly enjoy the hunt. Ryan Unger, one of Dylan's close buddies, childhood buddies. I've known Ryan for a few years. I mean, I've known Dylan since 2016. I actually talked to Dylan by email before that time. I think we had shared a breakfast at one time before then. Yep. Probably in 2015, maybe?
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah. But, you know, a long time. So with Dylan and getting to know him, I've gotten to know Ryan. And great guy. Dylan and Ryan hunt together a lot. That's their special rut hunting time, and they're good hunting buddies. Dylan's brother Carson sometimes is in the mix, and some other people. But Ryan and Dylan, we'll call them Unger, but Unger and Dylan, they got to go hunting down in Iowa. They have some land that they just do it yourself, private land, but they're down there hunting, and they set up trail cameras, planted food plots, kind of all do it yourself and having fun. And they went down and they're getting some pictures of at least 1 buck, 180 or higher.
I would say, yeah, a couple bucks that are booners. You know, I don't know, I couldn't put a certain inch on them, but big deer. So
you guys go down there, and it was last week.
Opening weekend.
Yeah, where Unger shoots a buck that was about 160. And when I saw the pictures, I was ecstatic. I mean, I know how exciting it would be for Unger and you and the celebrations that follow. I'm sure there were just at least a couple cases of bush lattes after that. Yeah. But, I mean, you know, really, really good times. It was exciting. Someone look at that and say, you drove all the way down to Iowa, you did all this, and you just shot a 160? I almost said but what a, but anyways, I said it. But anyways, what a bad outlook. Seriously, what a bad attitude. What a bad way to look at hunting. You know, for 2 buddies to go down there and shoot a 160, was that Unger's best buck?
No, but close.
Yeah.
Top couple.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you know, we set our expectation by other people's expectations far too often. That was an awesome hunt. They got to experience it together as buddies. And Dylan, if you grab that rack up there, this is actually one of Jen's set of antlers. And it's interesting, we have a buck on our property very similar to this one right here that we call 45. He's on our land here in Minnesota. I passed him up 3 times last year. He's a 4-year-old. This year he's a really pretty 5-year-old. And and I like them. I would say from the bucks we have right now, he's in the top 4 bucks, somewhere around there. We have a couple that we're waiting on that usually appear in mid-October and later. That might push him out of the top 5. But he's right up there close. Well, over last weekend, I had him walk by me. And I would say that he's pushing 150. He's got good mass, he's wide, maybe 145, 152, I don't know. He's a really nice buck. But the point is, he walked from 50 yards back. He was around me for over an hour, pinned me in the stand. I had to get out late. I ended up spooking him, getting out, which is, just a couple little noises. He was just a 5-year-old. He's on edge. And he actually walked by at 2 to 3 yards. And I got to watch him. So cool. He was around me within 25 yards for a long time, sometimes a little bit after dark, sometimes before. I first saw him about a half hour before shooting light end, about 35 minutes, right around there. So really cool experience. And when I first saw him, he'd get a little shaky. And even putting the release on the string when I knew he was coming for sure at 50 yards out, down to 2. Got a little bit shaky. And it was just so enjoyable watching him. And I can honestly say if we went out tonight, Dylan and I, because we're going to hunt tonight, and I saw that buck, I might shoot 45. He's a nice 5-year-old. It's kind of what we're after. But Dylan would be in the stand with me. And so I had all these thoughts in my head, kind of like, Dylan's not with me. Dante was out of town. He loves coming over and filming and celebrating. Jen was back at the house. She'll actually be hunting tonight. It's early. I want to see what those other bucks look like when they show up. We're waiting on 7-4 is one of them. Goofy's another one. We've seen Barry a few times. He already broke his right G2 off, but he's a magnificent buck. He's beautiful. So it's early. Didn't necessarily want to stop my hunting in Minnesota, even on a big buck. Dylan wasn't in the stand with me. Dante wasn't around. It's just, there's a lot that goes into it. It's not all about inches. I like enjoying the hunt. It's almost like after you shoot the buck, it's over, the work begins. And there's a lot more to hunting when it comes to even age, even inches. I love just enjoying the hunt, and that's number 5. Set realistic expectations and just enjoy the hunt. We get so focused on antlers, and I know even on this channel we talk about bucks all the time in the strategy. Someone made a comment today. They said, can you please give me a video on how to hunt does? Does, as far as strategy-wise, they're down here, and then everything that encompasses bucks up here, does are down here at the bottom of the funnel. What I mean by that is this is how much strategy you need for bucks. If you're doing this down here is easy. So if you focus on what you have to do for the hardest deer to kill in the neighborhood, that becomes very easy if you're consistent with. It's not like you're going to say, well, I know how to hunt bucks, I can never kill a doe. That's not the case. In fact, the sign of a healthy area to hunt is that your does are easy to kill. Because if you haven't destroyed the hunt in the area, in the habitat, in the woods, by overpressuring, and you have decent food sources, good cover, and I'm just talking adequate, doesn't even have to be the best, then you're going to have does and fawns. Does and fawns can stand up and watch you when you go by an ATV. Mature buck does not. And they rarely do. So there's a difference between the two. The point is that we focus on bucks a lot because that's the hardest part of the deer hunting strategy all around. Not that we focus on the amount of inches you have in your buck. There's a few select areas where not a lot of hunters, controlled herd, good genetics. Hey, there's a lot of areas in the country that equal 200 inches. But try to translate. That person usually can't go somewhere else and do the same thing because they have a special circumstance in that location. So again, your expectations, I like seeing as realistic. If you're really experienced, go for that upper 10%. If you're more of an inexperienced hunter, just getting into it, maybe you're a new bow hunter and you've always gun hunted, maybe go for that 20%, that upper 20%. If you're just starting out, just say, maybe you shoot anything. Like Dylan said, what did you say when we started this?
What's
about
that?
When a deer comes in?
Oh, if you're amped up, your heart's racing, and it's a buck that gets you going, let him have it. I did that last year in South Dakota on a 2-year-old that I was super jacked to shoot.
Yeah, but this was public land.
Yeah.
It was go in and sit, and you used a boat to get in. Mm-hmm. It was all e-scouting, pretty darn cool.
Absolutely.
And so different kind of hunting, but bottom line is you get jacked up, shoot it, enjoy the hunt, and that's really what's most important. And with Dylan, you know, I ask his opinion a lot, and even we're writing on this whiteboard, and I think you guys will be happy to know that this is so new that we're just starting out with it, but we're going to start a podcast. We meet about 50 times a year, and so it makes it pretty easy for us to look for that once a week time that we'll put out a podcast, try to between a half hour and an hour long. Jeff and Dylan talk deer, or what was that?
Deer Talk with Jeff and Dylan.
Deer Talk with Jeff and Dylan.
Lines,
yeah, I think I texted you the one title. What was it that we?
Jeff and Dylan Talk Deer. I like that.
Yeah, pretty basic.
Yep.
Jeff and Dylan Talk Deer, and so I hope you guys enjoy that. Also, I wanted to mention, I really appreciate you guys making it this far. Is First Light. I've used the gear now. This will be I think it's my third season. 2020, 21, 22. Yeah, so I think third season. I love it. I rely on it greatly. Right now is their big annual whitetail sale. All their Spectre clothing, which is their whitetail pattern, is on sale 20%. There's some limited new items, maybe boots. Their backpack isn't on sale, and that's about it. Most things are on sale. Link is in the description. I really love being able to pass off that 20% savings to you. It's a great time. You can count on this sale every year, and they're stocked up at First Light to make sure they can get these items out for you. So, and we'll go over some of our favorite gear in there. I can honestly say the Solitude is their midweight. I wear that a lot. The Sanctuary is the heavyweight. They both have wind stopper in them now, which is awesome. I really like the heavy bibs and then the Solitude jacket. They have some really good vests now that are either quilted, down, various weights. I like wearing a vest. Heavy merino wool. They have the best layers in the industry under that. So I'll wear something like the Sanctuary bibs, Solitude jacket, insulated vest, heavy merino wool, quarter zip, and then next to skin merino wool, and I'll stay toasty warm. Of course, I'm using a hand muff and using really good headwear too. But make sure you check out that sale. Appreciate you guys watching this far, and most of all, enjoy the hunt. Again, don't let someone else's expectations define yours. I urge everyone out there to really check out my web classes. They've been wildly successful. We have one that details how you should design your land, another one that details how you should plant and maintain and manage a food plot program. How can you make those decisions that fit your land specifically and not someone else's? Unfortunately, there's so much information in the hunting industry that says you should do this, but it doesn't apply to you. These web classes directly apply to you. And then we have our third web class that came out last year, Rut Web Class, navigating the entire rut. And then we have our fourth one coming out, which is hunting hills in thermals. I urge you to check those out, try the web classes, and they're all about teaching, helping you understand how you can navigate, not only managing your property, food plots, and the rut, but also hunting strategically, hills, thermals, and wherever you pursue whitetails for your dream and your passion.